I want to talk about one of the most underrated lenses that I have ever come across, the Sigma 45mm f2.8. It was first released back in 2019, so it's been available for a little while now, but if you're looking for a compact, sharp and versatile prime lens, this might be the perfect match for you. And while yes, I'm focusing on the L-mount version because I use Lumix cameras, it is also available for other mounts as well. So if you are using a different system, definitely stick around in this video. The lens itself is very compact. It feels almost like it was designed to live on your camera permanently, and because it's so small, it is perfect for street photography or travel or any time that you just want a nice lightweight setup. It is also built like an absolute tank. It feels solid. It is made almost entirely of metal. We've got a metal mount, it is weather sealed, and it feels very premium. The focus ring is very, very smooth, and we also get a clickable aperture ring, which is very, very satisfying. I'm going to come on to talk about that a little bit later on. I originally bought this lens to pair with my Lumix S9 and for it to stay on here pretty much permanently, because when they are paired together, it is a really nice size for just everyday photography to have with you wherever you go. But because of the size of it, and it is genuinely tiny, I love it paired with the S5 2X as well, and it has actually become one of my favourite go-to lenses for photography. One of my favourite things about this lens is that if you pair it with the Lumix S9, just like this, and you squint at it, it is the perfect size that it almost turns it into a Leica Q3. Almost. Now, one of the features that makes this lens really stand out to me is the clickable aperture ring. It's not something that you find on every single lens, but as I mentioned, I find it incredibly satisfying. I love that noise. But it also gives you much more tactile feedback when you are changing your aperture, and it feels much more engaging instead of just flicking the dial on your camera. Now, if you are using the clickable aperture ring on your lens, it does mean that you can't then change the aperture with the dial on your camera. But if you change it to A on your lens, then that engages the aperture dial on your camera. So you can either do it manually with the aperture ring or like you normally would on your camera. While it's not as fast as other prime lenses with apertures of say f1.8 or 1.4, f2.8 is still more than enough to get plenty of subject separation in your images. But when you add in the compression that you get at 45mm, f2.8 can produce some really nice bokeh effects. Is it bokeh or bokeh? I never know. Bokeh, bouquet, bokeh, bokeh, bokeh. I'm sticking with bokeh. But for me personally, I rarely ever shoot wide open anyway, even at f2.8, just because of the types of photography that I'm into, which is a more street landscape type of thing. But if this lens was to have an aperture of f1.8, it would be a lot bigger and a lot heavier. So I really don't mind the compromise of only having f2.8 on here. It really doesn't bother me. 45mm, this lens is really close to seeing what the human eye sees naturally, and it's slightly wider than a standard 50mm prime lens as well, which makes it useful for shooting so many different things in a variety of different situations, whether that's lifestyle photography, portraiture, street photography, and it just gives you a really natural perspective. Most of my photography is shot between 35 and 50mm, just because that's what works for me personally, which means that this 45mm prime sits pretty much bang in the middle of my favourite focal range, and it's pretty much suitable for nearly everything that I shoot. I was actually originally very nearly put off from buying this lens because I heard so many people talking about how it wasn't very sharp. I really need to say though that that's not an issue in the slightest. I genuinely think that Sigma pretty much nailed it with this lens. Even wide open at f2.8, you are getting really sharp images and there is so much detail. Now, if you are a pixel peeper, you might be able to notice that as you get to the edges or the corners of an image, it might not quite be as sharp as you might like it, and it maybe gets a little bit softer. That I'm not fussed by that. It doesn't really affect me because as you look at an image as a whole, you don't notice it. It's only when you really start to hone in on those tiny little details you might notice something. But I'm more interested in my images being able to tell stories and be intriguing than being 100% perfectly tack sharp. That being said though, I've genuinely not had an issue with this. I think it's brilliant and it's plenty sharp enough, so don't let that put you off. It's just a brilliant little lens, and it's actually one of my favourite prime lenses to use as well. The autofocus works great in both photo and video mode, although I do generally tend to use this for more photography stuff than I do video stuff, but if you are going to use it for a little bit of video, it works great. If you have a Lumix S9, it is perfect just because of the size of it. It's not too big for the body, but I also actually really like the way it works with the S5 IIX. It looks great on here, I think, and it just makes it a little bit of a more discreet camera while you're out maybe doing street photography or something like that. So whether you're just getting into photography and you're looking at maybe getting one of your first prime lenses, or just upgrading one of your lenses, or you're more of a seasoned pro, this lens has a lot to offer. It is a lot of fun and I would highly recommend it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Just before I go, all of the presets that I have used to edit my photos in this video are available for download on my website, which is linked just down below there, so go and check them out if you want to. It is massively appreciated if you do, as always. And if you want to know more about which other lens I recommend for your Lumix camera, I recommend you watch this video next, and I'll see you there.